Namaste, my friends. Welcome to Jack Colley's Black Book. This is episode number 26. And we're going to continue talking about just questions I have, observations that I've made, kind of centering on miracles. And one thing that I wanted to stress is that throughout these videos that I'm making, I'm not suggesting an either-or scenario. I'm not suggesting that you either have to take some of these miracles at face value and believe that they happen, or you have to dismiss them in favor of science. That's not at all what I'm saying. I think more so what I'm trying to do with many of the thoughts in the Black Book, I think what I'm trying to do is show that perhaps, even though we might have different interpretations of how something played out in our different narratives, perhaps we can still come to some pretty incredible conclusions without having to, demonize the other side or, take individuals who don't agree with us and just kind of set them up as, well, that's their idea and this is our idea, kind of the us versus them mentality. So I'm really looking at bringing in some different perceptions to these miracles, looking at them maybe from some different angles, and then saying, okay, if all of us have these differing beliefs, how can that actually enrich our understanding of some of these miracles? Because, and this is what just came to mind, because I think the problem is that I see a lot of people believing in these miracles and believing in stories, and that's kind of the end of it. They just believe the story happened, and they don't really do anything with it. They don't chew on it. They don't take time to be with it. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, that's the story. It's oh yeah, Jesus cured the woman of her bleeding when she touched his cloak, or oh yeah, Jesus made the man by the pool take up his mat and just walk, or yeah, Jesus just fed 5,000 people. We just, people just kind of accept it and they don't do much of anything else with it. And I've always been one. I've enjoyed thinking of things critically. And when I look at that, I just think, okay, well, what's the point? What's the point in having this story that Jesus fed the 5,000 if I can't really apply anything? I mean, I can apply these little surface lessons. Okay, trust God and you'll have food on your table. It's like, okay, I kind of get that, but what is something bigger that we can get out of these things? So I want to suggest that I want to go with, there's a saying in the book of John that Jesus said we're going to do the same works as him, but even greater. John chapter 14, it's in there somewhere. So John chapter 14, we're going to do the same works as Jesus, but even greater. And what does that mean? Does that mean I'm going to be able to feed $5,000 people? Does that mean I'm going to be able to make a paraplegic pick up his mat and walk? So that's kind of what I want to continue doing. And today we're going to take a look at the virgin birth. So one of the, I would say, the cornerstones of traditional Christianity, that there was a virgin birth. And so once again, I'm going to critique this a little bit, and this is by no means trying to disprove to you that there may or may not have been a virgin birth. That's really not where I'm coming from. But these are, I'm sharing thoughts that I have, and some of these are just going to make more questions. I'm not sure, but let's take a look at that. So some of the questions I wrote down in my Black Book. What if Mary did indeed experience pregnancy as a virgin? So that's the traditional Christian view, right? Mary is a virgin. She's not been with a man. And all of a sudden an angel shows up and says, you're pregnant by the Spirit of God. So what does that mean? And of course, that has been thoroughly vetted, I guess. I mean, you can find all sorts of lessons, sermons, teachings, homilies, all of those on hominy, that's corn, but homily. so you can find all sorts of teachings on that. But what does it mean, again, as a science person who has never experienced somebody being pregnant without having sexual intercourse, what does that mean if Mary did have sexual intercourse and found herself pregnant? What does it mean if her and Joseph were intimate before they were married? It certainly happens. That's certainly more the expectation of an unwanted pregnancy or an unplanned pregnancy than, a virgin birth. And then I got to thinking about this as I was kind of reflecting on the narrative. And how Joseph kind of stepped up to the plate, really, and said, I'm still going to take care of this woman who would likely have been ostracized from her community for, being pregnant out of wedlock. And what does that mean for Joseph? What does it mean if Mary became pregnant and it was not with Joseph? How does that change the narrative in the story? We still have this means, no matter how you interpret it, this story still gives us Jesus. It still gives us Rabbi Jesus, who I would probably argue is probably the most influential human being, if you will, that this earth has ever experienced. And even if Jesus were God, based on how he came into the world, I think of the idea of a Hindu avatar. So Avatar, this is way before, this is thousands and thousands of years before the Avatar movie and before, Japanese anime or wherever all these avatars show up. But the idea of an avatar is that God takes human form and intercedes in history. And so even the Hindu idea of an avatar seems to fit the Jesus narrative, the traditional Christian Jesus narrative, that God comes to earth in human form to intervene, to help us out, if you will. So there's a lot of different things that we can look at, but what does it mean to the story? Now, for me personally, I'm going to give you my personal opinion. The more I push the perspective on this, the more drama I guess I bring to the narrative. Even if I come to this idea that Mary became pregnant because she had sexual relations outside of marriage, and she became pregnant. And I believe a lot of scholars would say that she was a teenager. I mean, she was young, and it was through her that Jesus came into the world. Like, think about the ramifications. Think about the beauty of how God or how the universe works, that a young woman, a teenager, gets pregnant outside of marriage, and through her comes this human being, this avatar of God. I think we could even say God incarnate, comes into this world through this situation. And I mean, just think about the beauty of that. It certainly means more to me as a human being, as an imperfect human being, to know that I may mess up, but I can still be used. And I may not even know how I'm going to be used. I may not even know how my mess ups are going to impact the world in perhaps a positive way. So I want us to keep looking at just different perspectives and different angles of some of these stories, because I think sometimes, we've just kind of put them to rest too easily. Like, oh, it's Christmas. This is the virgin birth. There's a manger. That we kind of go through the stages, and it's like, it's all nice, and there's warm fuzzies, and we're all sitting around the Christmas tree, and all of that is really nice. Some of these traditions are very nice, but I also believe that some of these stories and some of these traditions can have new life breathed into them, so that they can impact us. And so I'm going to continue. I hope to continue making sure that our interpretations and our personal perceptions on things don't end without changing something in us. All right. Namaste, my friends.